going on, YouTube? How you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another Coffee with Kensou. Hopefully you guys have your cup of coffee and you're ready for this topic, because this one's kind of an interesting one. This topic I decided to take from my Discord, and this is coming from D4Z, someone who's been supporting the channel for quite some time, so thank you for that. His question for me for this topic was basically, how do you get better at implementing things into your gameplay, right? So with that being said, say there's some new, strategies, some new techs, some new combos, how do we go about implementing that on a consistent basis, right? Essentially, what I would suggest to do is to practice it first and foremost. Sit in a training room, get it down to a science, build up the muscle memory. You want to build up the confidence in order to do that, right? And from that point on, you have to play the game and allow yourself to make the mistakes necessary to essentially land this. You want to have confidence in everything that you do, right? Because there's something in particular with this topic I kind of want to touch base on, and it's kind of important, and it revolves around watching match videos, right? So a lot of times people will watch match videos of high level play and see some new tech in particular, and then tell themselves they need to do that. Well, there's a few things you need to understand first and foremost before you actually can implement that. And the first and most important thing, in my honest opinion, is to understand that there is a clear difference in the level of play where you're at and the level of play where that other player that you're watching may or may not be at. Their level of play and their level of thinking is actually going to be a lot higher than the level in which that you're playing at currently, right? So you have to acknowledge that what their strategies are may not work at the lower level of play or where you're at, because those players that you're playing are not thinking at that level, right? So for example, a specific shimmy or a specific way of approaching, a certain matchup may not work at your level of play, because as I said, the player you're playing isn't thinking about that. They're just thinking about getting their rock sauce, trying to get their cool combo, maybe their cool mix up, and then bada bing, bada boom. Everyone plays for different reasons, and they're thinking about different things at different levels of play, right? So you have to understand that, right? Second, what you want to go ahead and do from that point on is to decipher why it worked, right? Or why said tech works for said player, or said Twitter tech or YouTube tech or what have you. Whatever the strategy is, whatever the combo is, you have to ask yourself why it works, and then then you can ask yourself other questions like, when should you implement that, etc., etc. So constantly when you're learning new game plans and new strategies and all kinds of stuff, you want to be asking yourself constant questions about when, how, why, when should you, where should you, is it a counter hit, is it a finicky starter, is it, etc., etc. In the instance of it being a combo, right? Let's say it was a very heavy hitting combo, and that combo led to a really good mix-up situation or a good knockdown situation for your character, right? I think it's very apparent that you should try to learn it, or some kind of variation of it, so that you can allow yourself, good damage and a good knockdown situation, right? And this comes into play regarding, maybe you might have to change it up a little bit. So let's say like it's a quote unquote optimal starter, because we know in the FGC people always claim everything to be optimal, right? So if you get the, I'm sorry, I'm gonna keep doing this, optimal starter, sometimes it requires like a big jump in or a big counter hit, Guilty Gear max risk gauge or some nonsense like that. You may not want to go for that, right, entirely, right? But you might want to find a variation of that you can utilize for yourself. So let's say started with the jump in, right? Alleviate the jump in and just do the rest of the combo. And then, whatever else comes from there. If you can get it from a light starter and it does a little less damage than the bigger starter, good. Then you can utilize that and keep building the muscle memory to utilize that combo until you get, you get it down to a science for the bigger starter, right? And then you practice the knockdown situation after that and go from there. Because a lot of times we see stuff, sometimes, it could be for, a safe jump, it could be for baiting out a super. Sometimes when you watch stuff at high level, it could be for a multitude of reasons. Sometimes higher level players forget to do certain things to stop certain situations. So sometimes it's just caught in the moment and you try it yourself and you're like, it didn't work for me. It's like, well, given the context of the situation, which is why I say you gotta question why all the time. And the current fighting games that we have, they definitely have really good training modes that allow us to test reversal options and just test all kinds of different situations for us to make sure we're doing, the best possible, strategies, to help us in pretty much to help us in our gameplay, right? So moving forward, as I said, you want to make sure you're building up the muscle memory to do this. Another thing I want to add to this is essentially you want to take L's. I know this is something that's very difficult to swallow. It's a hard pill to accept, but in order to get proficient at newer strategies, newer game plans, you have to be willing to lose. It's okay to lose. So don't look at your win-loss ratios as like, oh man, I lost trying to do this tech. It's useless. No, keep trying. Get the muscle memory down for it until you can do it, consistently. You may start out at 20%, 25%, but as you keep practicing it, as you keep trying to implement it in your games, keep doing it in training mode and get it down, you'll build the confidence, you'll build the muscle memory, you'll be able to execute that at, whatever high capacity as you keep going, because, as with anything, you get what you put in, right? So if you put in the time, you'll be able to get it. But remember, I can't stress this enough. Everyone learns differently, right? So don't be upset because you weren't able to implement this into your, this new strategy into your game plan, within less than 2 hours, Sometimes it takes time. Like, not everyone learns at the same rate. Everyone learns differently, and maybe you learn differently as opposed to your friend or some other player around you. Like, it doesn't matter. It's all about self and self-reflection at that point, right? So reflect on yourself and focus on yourself and improving your strategies as you move along, Even if you can't get that Twitter tech that came out 2 weeks ago, you'll eventually get to that point, right? It doesn't matter. There's going to be more newer things for you to practice, more newer things to, strategize on. And there's nothing wrong with that, Do not be discouraged because you're losing, right? Because one thing that happens is we deem it as like, oh, screw this tech. It's not worth using, right? Not necessarily. Obviously you have to decipher what's good and what's not, right? But don't make yourself forcefully regress into your current pattern, right? By that, what I mean is, based on our own experiences, we tend to use our current strategies because it's based on our experience and the people that we're playing against, right? So anything's kind of new in some cases, it's like, well, that's kind of cool, but I already do this now and this already works, so I don't really feel the need to go and learn this thing or keep stressing myself out to learn this new strategy or whatever to win this matchup for my character or what have you, right? Don't be that guy. Like, accept that you have to evolve, right? Like, you can't keep doing strats from like month 1, month 2, moving into like, coming into like the full year. Granted, there are some characters who are simple that can still utilize basic strategies. Don't get me wrong, but things evolve, the games evolve, patches happen, characters change and strategies, combos change. People find newer ways to approach, newer ways to do combos, newer ways to do like a plethora of things, right? So you want to do your best to keep up with those strategies, even if you can't implement them at 100%. If you can implement them at whatever percent that you're comfortable at, that's great. That means you can move on to the next thing because you're building up the, the muscle memory. You're building up the repetition to get it down. So at the end of the day, simply put, just don't be afraid to implement these things. Do not be afraid. Do not worry about your win-loss ratios. Focus on implementing the newer strategies, the new combos, everything that you can to keep improving yourself, because that's what we want to do, right? We want to be the best players that we can be. Don't regress. Don't regress. Don't stay stagnant. Keep evolving. Keep evolving. So I think that's pretty much all I got to say here for this topic. Let me know how you guys feel about this topic in the comments below. Or if you have any other topics you want to see me cover here on Coffee with Kensou, feel free. Let me know. Do not be afraid. Don't be shy. And with that being said, let me go ahead and get up out of here. And don't forget to sip your coffee because I definitely need to do that. So good. So yeah, catch you guys in the next video. Peace.